you're going to need an army to go against me. I fell off my roof and I broke some ribs. Every time I talked to him, I said, I want my truck. Then he started threatening me.
This is Roy Fraser, a man accused of fatally shooting 2 roommates in the head and burying their bodies on his property. In April 2009, 24-year-old Kenneth Yaretz Jr. and 31-year-old Daimen Marks vanished without any apparent reason, leaving their loved ones in constant intrigue and worry. A week of relentless investigation yielded no answers, prompting Kenneth's father to visit the home of Roy Frederick Fraser, Kenneth's roommate, friend, and business partner. However, Fraser denied any knowledge of their whereabouts, claiming ignorance about their disappearance. Despite his protestations, the police's thorough search led them to Fraser's property, where they made a chilling discovery. Kenneth and Marks' lifeless bodies were found, bearing the marks of gunshot wounds and stabs on the very grounds where Fraser and Kenneth had been growing marijuana together. This tragic revelation marked the beginning of the Roy Fraser case. Prior to being highlighted as a possible suspect, Fraser took the initiative to approach the police, volunteering to testify about his relationship with Kenneth.
And with me is Mr. Roy Fraser. It's F-R-A-S-E-R?
Yep.
Is that the right spelling?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have a middle name, Mr. Fraser?
Frederick.
Frederick?
The interrogation commenced with formal protocols, including the announcement that the interview was being recorded and other standard norms, such as the formal introduction of each other.
So can you tell me how you ended up phoning him?
His dad, or Ken's dad, came and talked to me Friday night and said, have you seen Kenny? And I said, no. And he said, is his stuff still here? And I said, yeah, his bed's here and, all his stuff is still here, And he says, well, they're missing, blah, blah, blah. And they said they've been missing for like a week.
Who's they?
Pardon me?
When you say they...
Kenny and his friend.
Kenny and his friend. Did
Yeah.
you mention his friend's name?
Daimen.
Daimen? Okay.
Fraser candidly admits why he made the call to the police, and the reasons are crystal clear. He knew he was bound to end up on the suspect list because 1, he had a history intertwined with Kenneth, 2, Kenneth's belongings and essentials still resided at his place.
Okay. So what was the relationship between you and Ken?
We were just friends.
Friends?
Yeah.
So you've known him for a while?
A couple years. A girl that I knew from Calgary that I was going out with for a bit. When she come to town, she introduced me to.
Okay.
And that was it. And and then I haven't seen her in like a year and a half.
Okay.
And stuff. So, but Ken and I, he come out to my place and I showed him where I live, and he come out a couple of times and he brought some beer and I thought he was a good kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it.
Their relationship extended beyond mere friendship. Kenneth and Fraser were business partners involved in the cultivation of marijuana at Fraser's rental property in Kenneth Lake. This fact presents one of the plausible theories behind the brutal killings of Kenneth and Marks, a motive that remains under investigation.
And where did you see him?
When did I see? Where?
Yeah.
Oh, he come to my house.
Oh, he came over to your place?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and what was his mood at that time?
His mood was good when I see him.
Unlike other unwise suspects, Fraser is making the same mistake by refraining from seeking legal counsel and attempting to construct his own narrative. This approach is only compounding his difficulties and making his situation more precarious. His lies, including mentioning false dates and manipulating timelines, are proving ineffective in extricating him from the situation. Instead, they are further entangling him in a web of trouble.
He's using my truck. And at first I really, I let him use my truck because I fell off my roof and I broke some ribs, March 5th or 6th, right? And I told him that. And I want my truck and everything else, and spring is coming up. And I said, my insurance is due in 4 or 5 days. I want my truck. Every time I talked to him, I said, I want my truck. in the last few months, he'd come out like once a month or something. And I try phoning him on his cell phone, and he's not answering his cell phone number. But, come the new year, every time I seen him or talked to him, I said, I want my truck.
Mm-hmm.
And, and then the last time I talked to him, I said, I'm going to call the RCMP, and then he started threatening me.
And it was by, you received a phone call from,
Yeah.
you called him on his cell?
No, he called me.
He called you?
Yeah, and I said, if you don't come with my truck, I'm going to call the RCMP. And then he started threatening me.
What did he say?
He says, the RCMP won't do you any good. You're going to need an army to go against me. That's what he said.
The truck Fraser mentions is another one of the possible theories as to why Kenneth and Marks are no longer alive. Fraser's frustration becomes evident through his statement. According to him, Kenneth borrowed his truck for a brief period, but instead of returning it, he took possession and refused to give it back. This circumstance raises the possibility that Fraser may have killed him over this dispute. However, this motive does not explain why Marks met a tragic end as well. According to statements, Marks was killed because he had witnessed what happened between Fraser and Kenneth. Unlike Kenneth and Fraser, Marks had no history of involvement in drugs or other illegal activities. He simply found himself at the wrong place at the wrong time.
He told me that he became an IS member.
Ken told you that?
Yeah, and, I said, I didn't think that you wanted anything to do with gangs, and he said he'd been trying to get in there for 2 or 3 years,
Fraser seems to be attempting to divert attention from himself by suggesting the possibility that the Independent Soldiers, IS gang, might be responsible for the disappearance or killings of Kenneth and Marks. He subtly introduces the idea that Kenneth may have become associated with the IS gang, which is not entirely unfounded. The Independent Soldiers, also known as the IS gang, is a notorious organized crime group operating in British Columbia, Canada, with involvements in organized crime activities nationwide and even within Canadian prisons. By mentioning this, Fraser seems to be subtly implying that Kenneth's association with the IS gang might have led to the unfortunate events. However, it remains to be seen whether this claim holds any validity, or if Fraser is using it as a diversion tactic to shift the focus away from himself.
So what did Ken do for a living?
I don't know what he did.
Do you know if he had any employment?
He didn't have a job or anything.
Fraser weaves yet another deceptive tale by claiming ignorance about Kenneth's employment or the nature of his livelihood, despite both of them being involved in marijuana operations together. These fabrications are only adding to the complexity of his situation, as providing self-serving alibis and avoiding legal counsel rarely led to favorable outcomes. After extracting what he believes to be possible information in under 30 minutes, the detective changes his approach and decides to assert some pressure on Fraser.
We're trying to find out what happened to him.
Yeah.
So we need to find out all the details. We really don't care about any criminal activity that you may have been involved in. So I just want to make you relax about that.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I'd like to get a true story.
Yeah.
We're not blind. We're not blind to anything.
Right.
And I just don't want to. He said, I'd like you to be as frank as you can be to show me what was the relationship between you and Ken. I think there's a little bit more to the story now. But we need to know all those little details. If something did happen to Ken or Daimen, we'd like to know. And so any little details that you may have, or anything that you're not telling me, nobody's an angel. Right?
I don't know what happened to these.
First, he reassures Fraser that he can relax, but simultaneously, the detective hints that there is more to the story that Fraser is holding back. By doing so, the detective plants the idea in Fraser's mind that, despite his voluntary appearance and cooperation, getting out of this matter without further scrutiny won't be as straightforward as he may have hoped.
So let me ask you that, was there more than what you just told me about the relationship with Ken?
What he did, after he told me he became an independent soldier, I just don't like those gang guys.
Mm-hmm.
And, Like, I've never liked gang guys.
When the detective inquires if Fraser has divulged all the details about his relationship with Kenneth, Fraser veers off track once more, bringing up the gang once again to divert from the actual question. However, the detective isn't easily swayed and persists, mentioning Fraser's involvement in the dope business.
At one point, did you guys get into criminal activities, whether or not it is to, let's say, grow dope?
Yeah.
You guys growing dope together?
No.
No?
No. He wanted to grow dope.
At your place?
No, at another place.
Another place, okay.
Yeah, another place. I've never been to the place in that, but
were they taking care of a girl somewhere close to your place? Was it the reason why they were living so far out of the city?
no, they had a place that it was, I don't know, half an hour or 40 minutes from my place that they wanted to set up, but they never did set it up.
When you say they again, it's Daimen and Ken.
Well, originally it was supposed to be Daimen and Ken, but you know, it never got set up, so.
Did you do any work for Ken and
No,
Daimen?
I didn't.
In response, Fraser resorts to another lie, shifting the blame onto Kenneth by claiming that it was Kenny's idea to grow the dope. But the truth is that both Fraser and Kenneth had jointly planted the marijuana on Fraser's property last year, and Fraser was the one operating the entire operation himself.
The transfer form
Okay.
for ownership. Just want to see if you can tell me whether or not the signature or handwriting is yours.
As the investigation progresses, the detective delves into the topic of Fraser's truck and questions why a lent vehicle cannot be treated as stolen. Despite the line of questioning, Fraser remains composed, keeping his demeanor simple and often flashing a calm smile during the interrogation. He feels secure in the belief that his property has not been searched yet, and this false sense of security leads him to think that he won't be considered a serious suspect. Little does he know that the search of his property will be the final nail in the coffin. His voluntary cooperation has already left loose ends.
The last time you spoke to him was on the phone, beginning of March, you said? Roughly,
Yep.
of this year.
Yep.
You spoke to Ken. Ken phoned you.
Yep.
Tell me again the conversation that you had with Ken on the phone. How did it go?
I don't know, like, the beginning of the conversation, but, like, I can't remember, but at the end, you know, like, I kept telling him, like, I want my truck back, right? And I said, Kenny, I'm going to report you to the RCMP. And then he just blew up, you know, on the phone. And everything else, and tell me I'd need an army to go up against him and just everything, right? And he's screaming at me on the phone, and I'm just holding the phone.
The detective resumes the conversation by employing a common technique, asking Fraser to recall the last call he had with Kenny, hoping to uncover any inconsistencies in Fraser's recollection. However, to the detective's surprise, Fraser confidently recalls the event without any signs of deception, leading him to believe that he has successfully removed himself from suspicion. Unfortunately for Fraser, the interrogation doesn't end there. The subsequent search of his property yields damning evidence. Kenny's blood is discovered on the premises, and burned evidence is found in a fire pit. Furthermore, the murder weapon is also unearthed, providing substantial proof against him. Additionally, forensic details, like determining whether the murderer was left-handed or right-handed, further incriminate Fraser. Fraser maintains his innocence throughout the trial, claiming he did not kill Kenny or Marks. However, the jury swiftly reaches a decision based on the overwhelming evidence at hand. The bodies were found on his land, the murder weapon was discovered there, and attempts to destroy evidence were evident. Ultimately, Fraser is found guilty of first-degree murder for the death of Daimen Marks and guilty of second-degree murder for the death of Kenneth Yaretz Jr. He received a life sentence with parole ineligibility for 10 years on one count and 25 years on the other. The evidence leaves no room for doubt, and Fraser's confident demeanor during the interrogation proves to be a fleeting illusion in the face of undeniable facts.